When we usually talk about technology, we tend to default to picturing this weightless, frictionless cloud.
Right, like it's just this pristine thing floating up there.
Exactly. We imagine this purely digital realm where everything is perfectly optimized and clean and, completely separate from the actual dirt and concrete of our everyday lives.
Yeah, it's a really comforting illusion, honestly. Treating the digital ether like it just exists somewhere above the consequences of the physical world.
But then you actually look at what's happening out there and that illusion just completely shatters. You realize the cloud is bolted to the
Oh,
ground.
for sure. It's incredibly tethered.
It's tethered to the incredibly messy, volatile, and, well, human-driven systems of our planet. So today, we're looking at what happens when the unstoppable force of digital acceleration slams into the immovable object of our physical reality.
Yeah, from energy pinch points in the Middle East all the way to regulatory panic in local school districts.
Welcome to the deep dive. Pull up a chair. It is great to have you with us.
We're working through a pretty massive stack of updates from today's May 24, 2026 morning briefing. And our mission today is really to cut through the noise and show you the hidden wiring connecting some wildly different headlines.
And as we unpack this, we need to address something up front for you listening. Today's sources cover some heavy, highly charged executive actions and legislative battles.
Really polarizing stuff.
Yeah, but our goal here isn't to debate the politics of the White House or, what state legislators are doing. We don't take sides, left or right, and we aren't endorsing any of the policies we discuss.
We're strictly here to impartially map the factual reality. Just tracing how pulling a geopolitical lever over here physically shifts the tech landscape over there.
Right, because that mechanical reality is really all that matters for our purposes today. The global systems interact whether we agree with them or not.
They absolutely do.
Okay, so let's unpack this by starting with a massive geopolitical shift. President Trump has just announced that a sweeping nuclear and ceasefire deal with Iran is, quote, largely negotiated.
Which is a huge development.
Huge. We are looking at a 60-day ceasefire extension, and crucially, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The administration's demand is that Iran must renounce its nuclear ambitions and suspend its uranium enrichment program.
Right, and in exchange, they get a pathway to permanent sanctions relief and some unfrozen funds.
Exactly. Now, Tehran hasn't formally confirmed the exact terms yet, but the immediate actionable headline is that the Strait of Hormuz is reopening.
Which fundamentally alters the global energy calculus. I mean, to really grasp the scale of that, you have to look at the geography of that specific waterway.
Okay, think of the global energy supply as the world's circulatory system. The Strait of Hormuz is basically the main artery. Roughly 20% of the entire world's oil supply flows through a single 21-mile-wide pinch point.
It's an incredible bottleneck.
And if you're wondering why a deep dive that's heavily focused on AI is starting with an oil choke point, well, it comes back to the cloud being bolted to the ground.
The physical infrastructure creates the ceiling for the digital infrastructure.
Right. Artificial intelligence required staggering amounts of computational power. That compute requires massive data centers, and those data centers are devouring electricity at a rate we have literally never seen before.
So physical energy stability directly dictates the cost of running the digital future.
Exactly. And it's not just energy markets reacting to these global moves. The morning briefing highlights another major executive decision today. Just a week after canceling a deployment, President Trump abruptly reversed course and ordered 5,000 U.S. troops to Poland.
Yeah, putting them right near the Suwałki Gap, which is that highly strategic, very narrow corridor connecting Poland to Lithuania.
Right. And with the Russia-Ukraine war grinding into its fifth year now, European allies have been, well, pretty anxious about collective defense.
Oh, absolutely. But consider the technological shockwave of moving 5,000 troops to NATO's eastern flank basically overnight. A deployment like that isn't just about moving personnel. It's a massive instant demand for specialized tech infrastructure.
Because they can't just show up and use local Wi-Fi.
Exactly. The military suddenly needs entirely new nodes of NATO-aligned cyber defense. They require secure, heavily encrypted communications that can't be jammed, fresh satellite connectivity, rapid threat intelligence sharing platforms.
The technology is forced to follow the troops.
Right. Geopolitical whiplash dictates the immediate spending and focus of the tech sector.
It's just a bizarre paradox, though. We will spend billions of dollars to instantly deploy cutting-edge encrypted satellite networks across the globe, but then we utterly fail to implement basic physical safety tech where it matters most.
You are looking at the tragedy in Shaanxi province.
I am. Late Friday, a massive gas explosion tore through the Lushenyu coal mine in Shaanxi City, China, and the numbers are just devastating.
They really are.
82 workers were killed, and more than 120 are currently hospitalized. It is the deadliest mining accident in China in over a decade. President Xi Jinping has already mandated a thorough investigation.
Which you would expect, given the scale.
But here is the detail that I simply cannot get past. This exact facility was flagged by China's National Mine Safety Administration back in 2024 for dangerously high gas content.
So they knew it was a risk.
They knew. And when the explosion inevitably happened, the rescue efforts were severely hampered because the workers didn't have GPS trackers.
Wow.
Yeah, and the rescue teams were navigating the underground tunnels using inaccurate paper maps.
Paper maps in 2026.
I mean, I have to stop here because this disconnect is infuriating. We are living in an era where I can track a $5 food delivery on my phone to the exact minute it arrives at my door. How are we losing 82 human beings underground because of paper maps?
It is deeply tragic, and it perfectly illustrates what we call the tech gap.
Right.
The assumption is often that industrial disasters happen because we simply don't have the tools to prevent them. But the technology to save these workers already exists. It's actually highly mature.
Right. We're not waiting on an invention.
No, not at all. The Industrial Internet of Things, or IoT, has totally revolutionized safety for the facilities that actually bothered to deploy it.
So what does a modernized mine actually look like, mechanically speaking?
Well, a fully modernized facility operates almost like a living, breathing nervous system. They install real-time gas sensors that don't just alert a dashboard, but automatically trigger site-wide evacuations. The second methane level spike.
Okay.
They use underground, millimeter-accurate GPS arrays, so every single worker's location is rendered in 3D space in real time. And they deploy computer vision monitoring systems that constantly scan the tunnel walls to visually detect microscopic structural anomalies, long before human eyes could ever spot a collapse.
But absolutely none of that was deployed at Lushenyu.
Nothing. The real danger we face isn't a lack of human innovation. It is the fatal lag in implementation. We invent the future in these pristine labs, but we fail to distribute it to the messy physical environments where it could actually save lives.
Which makes the contrast with the enterprise tech world almost jarring. Legacy industries drag their feet on $10 safety sensors, but corporate AI is accelerating at a speed that is genuinely hard to comprehend.
It's blindingly fast.
Let's look at the hardware race, because the numbers out of Cerebras systems today are just staggering.
The largest tech IPO of 2026 so far.
Cerebras just went public, raising $5.5 billion and hitting a $106 billion valuation. And they brought the receipts to justify it. They are currently running a trillion-parameter open-weight AI model, specifically Moonshot AI's Kimi K2.6.
Right.
And they are running it at a verified 981 output tokens per second.
That speed is unreal. For anyone not living in the developer trenches, let's break down what a token actually is. Think of a token as a fraction of a word. Generating 981 tokens a second means this system is spitting out roughly a 700-word essay every single second.
But that feels instantaneous.
It does. And to give you the competitive landscape, the absolute best GPU cloud provider on the market tapped out at around 145 tokens a second. Cerebras is running nearly 7 times faster.
I'm looking at the engineering behind this, and it is a complete paradigm shift. Traditional AI setups use massive clusters of separate GPU chips.
Yeah, thousands of them wired together.
Right, and the bottleneck in those old systems wasn't the processing power itself. It was the traffic jam of data trying to travel back and forth between all those separate chips. It's basically a memory bandwidth issue.
Exactly.
But Cerebras solved this with their wafer scale Engine 3. Instead of cutting the silicon wafer into dozens of little chips, they just built one gigantic chip the size of a dinner plate. All the memory and processing are physically touching, which completely eliminates the data traffic jam.
It's brilliant. But it's not just the hardware that is evolving. The software is becoming something entirely new alongside it.
Yeah, the application layer.
Right. This is where we shift from sheer speed to actual autonomy. If Cerebras is building a faster engine, companies like Google and Ryder are building the autonomous driver. Google just rolled out a managed agents API.
Which is a huge deal for developers.
Massive. Previously, if a developer wanted to build an AI agent that could actually do work in a corporate system, they had to manually code how the AI would remember past conversations, how it would securely access company tools, and how it would orchestrate multiple tasks. It took weeks of custom engineering.
And now?
Google's new API handles all of that invisible back-end wiring with literally a single line of code.
Wow. And then Writer takes that underlying capability and kind of weaponizes it for business. They just launched autonomous AI agents that operate on event triggers rather than waiting for a human prompt.
That's the key difference.
Yeah. So an email from a client comes in or a value changes in a Salesforce database, and the AI instantly wakes up, makes a business decision, executes the work, and logs an auditable record of what it did.
All without a human typing a single command.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at this evolution like the history of driving. For the past few years, using generative AI was like driving a wildly fast sports car. Yes, it was powerful, but you still had to have your hands firmly on the wheel. You had to carefully type the prompt, steer the context, and correct its mistakes constantly.
Yeah, you were still the driver.
What Writer and Google are introducing is fundamentally different. They are handing us a fully autonomous vehicle. You don't prompt it. A trigger happens out in the world. The car turns itself on, locks onto the destination, drives there, does the work, and parks itself in the garage while you are completely asleep in the backseat.
The implications of that are profound when you combine these two breakthroughs.
How so?
Well, when you have a massive intelligence model generating 981 tokens a second, latency practically vanishes. Complex multi-step reasoning happens so fast it feels instantaneous to the human user.
Right.
But when you couple that zero latency speed with absolute autonomy, where the AI is making database-level decisions by itself, the underlying infrastructure layer becomes the ultimate source of corporate power.
Because once a company wires its entire operations into that autonomous nervous system, they can never really unplug.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is the deepest platform lock-in we have ever seen. Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, they aren't just selling software anymore. They are racing to become the default cognitive infrastructure of the global economy. Whoever controls the autonomous agents basically controls the company itself.
But if corporate AI is accelerating at this terrifying pace, how are the humans on the ground actually absorbing it? Because looking at the cultural sources in our briefing, there's a massive wave of friction building up. People are hitting the emergency brake.
The economic anxiety is really spilling out into the open.
It's happening in real time on social media. There are videos going completely viral on TikTok and X right now from the class of 2026 graduations.
Yeah, I saw those.
We are seeing university students actively booing AI executives and tech figures during their commencement speeches. These executives get up to the podium to preach about the beautiful inevitability of AI, and the graduates, the exact generation about to compete with these autonomous agents for jobs, just loudly boo them off the stage.
It's incredibly unscripted and visceral.
It really is.
And that grassroots rejection is translating directly into legislative panic at both the state and federal levels. Regulators are scrambling to build walls around this technology. According to multi-state tracking, there are currently 134 separate state AI education bills moving through 31 different state legislatures.
134 bills.
Yeah. They are demanding strict student data privacy, mandatory human oversight of any AI-generated content, and explicit parental consent frameworks.
Wait, let me look at the logistics of that. How on earth does a local public school district manage compliance for 134 different state bills? It creates this impossible fragmented patchwork of laws.
They cannot manage it.
Yeah.
Not without fundamentally restructuring how they operate. And the complexity is only increasing. At the federal level, Congress is rapidly advancing an updated version of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act's CUPIO 2.0.
Right, which has teeth.
It does. This legislation doesn't just ask nicely. It threatens to outright ban targeted advertising to children, demands highly transparent data deletion protocols, and forces companies to secure explicit parental consent before any third-party data sharing can occur.
So what does this actually mean for the people building and buying these systems? Are we trying to force autonomous technology down the throats of a generation that is actively legislating against it?
Well, it means that governance infrastructure is now infinitely more critical than technological capability.
That makes sense.
If you are a school administrator, a hospital director, or an ed tech vendor, and you do not establish your compliance and data privacy frameworks right now, you are going to be completely paralyzed.
Because the ground rules are changing under their feet.
Exactly. Tools that your staff rely on today might legally require vendor recertification or brand new parental notification protocols by next month. The technology will always move faster than the law, but when the law finally catches up, it strikes with a very heavy hand.
And the deeply unsettling reality is that while the regulators are scrambling to build these compliance walls, malicious actors have already bypassed the walls entirely. we have to talk about the expanding cyber attack surface. Because if everything is hyperconnected and AI is automating our databases, the blind spots are massive.
The attack surface has never been wider, and the threats range from opportunistic hackers exploiting old systems to highly sophisticated state actors.
Let's start with the ticking clock on the legacy systems. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, has issued a hard federal deadline of May 29. That is just 5 days from now.
The clock is ticking?
Federal agencies must patch a massive vulnerability in Microsoft Exchange servers. It's cataloged as CVE 2026-42897.
It is a cross-site scripting flaw that enables devastating spoofing attacks.
Let's break down how that actually works. Essentially, attackers send a specially crafted malicious email. Because of the flaw, the unpatched server is tricked into believing this malicious script is a trusted internal command. It allows the hacker to steal administrative credentials and entirely compromise the network. And the terrifying part is the sheer volume of local governments and school districts still running these vulnerable on-premise servers because they simply never had the budget to migrate to the cloud.
But the danger isn't just confined to dusty old servers. The bleeding edge of the modern software development world is actively under siege too. We really need to look at the Megalodon campaign.
The scale of this attack is hard to wrap your head around. In a single 6-hour window, attackers pushed 5,718 malicious code commits to over 5,500 different GitHub repositories.
It's an industrialized attack.
Yeah. They specifically targeted the Laravel-Lang PHP ecosystem, injecting a hidden framework designed entirely to steal developer credentials.
It's a classic supply chain attack.
I want you to imagine you are a highly ambitious burglar. Instead of spending years trying to pick the locks on 5,000 individual houses.
That would take forever.
Right. Instead, you just break into the town's water treatment plant and poison the reservoir. Every single house that turns on the tap gets infected automatically. That is exactly what a supply chain attack is. Hackers poison a widely used software dependency, and downstream developers blindly trust it, pulling that poisoned code right into their own secure applications.
The water reservoir analogy perfectly captures the mechanism of the threat. Developers rely on a foundation of trust. And this Megalodon campaign comes mere days after a separate disclosure where 3,800 internal GitHub repositories were compromised through a malicious Visual Studio Code extension.
It's relentless.
The hard truth that the tech industry has to swallow is that the perimeter is dead.
There is no firewall high enough to keep them out if you were inviting them through the front door.
Precisely. The modern attack surface is the software supply chain itself. This is exactly why SBOM software bill of materials are transitioning from best practices to mandatory legal requirements.
Yeah, and SBOM is basically an ingredient list for your software.
Exactly. If you do not know the exact verified ingredients making up the applications you deploy, you have no way of knowing if you just drank the poisoned water.
And the stakes go from corporate espionage to global security. When state-sponsored actors leverage these blind spots, cybersecurity researchers have just unmasked a major China-linked espionage campaign.
This one is particularly concerning.
They are utilizing spear phishing and 0 days, which, simply put, are secret flaws in software that the good guys have 0 days to prepare for because the hackers found them first. They are using these 0 days to target government and defense sectors across South and East Asia. They are hitting journalists, activists, and crucially, they've successfully targeted a European government belonging to NATO.
Which represents a massive geopolitical escalation. When a state actor compromises a NATO member state, it ceases to be a simple cybercrime issue. It triggers formal diplomatic responses and high-level intelligence sharing.
Right, it's statecraft at that point.
Yeah, exactly. What we are looking at is a broad, highly aggressive intelligence collection mandate happening quietly in the background of global diplomacy.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of heavy ground today. We've traced the physical impact of geopolitical flashpoints, the tragedy of legacy infrastructure, the blinding speed of autonomous AI, the regulatory chaos sweeping the country, and the terrifying reality of state-sponsored cyber attacks.
It is a lot to carry for one briefing.
It really is. So we are going to take a collective breath, slow down the pace, and transition to something wonderfully human.
A very necessary cultural palate cleanser.
Exactly. Over at the 79th Cannes Film Festival, Romanian director Cristian Mungiu has just won the prestigious Palme d'Or for his film Fjord. It is this intense, deeply grounded culture war drama about a family being targeted by Child Protective Services in Norway.
It sounds incredibly heavy, but beautiful.
Yeah, and what makes this even more wild is that the distributor behind the film, Neon, has now secured their 7th consecutive Palme d'Or win.
Which is an utterly unprecedented streak in modern cinematic history. The festival jury specifically praised the film for its unflinching examination of identity, what it means to belong, and the devastating limits of institutional power over human lives.
It is a profound piece of high art celebrating human resilience. But what I love is that everyday people are celebrating that exact same resilience right now on social media.
Oh, you're tracking the everything hallelujah trend.
I am, and it is genuinely the most wholesome thing taking over TikTok and Instagram right now. Millions of people are taking Justin Bieber's new acoustic track, Everything Hallelujah, and they are just setting it to videos of the mundane, beautiful things they love.
Just everyday moments.
Yeah, it's videos of their aging pets, their grandparents laughing, hometown sunsets, a really good cup of coffee. Even massive celebrities like Kylie Jenner and Louis Capaldi have jumped in, posting these incredibly grounded, quiet moments of their lives.
It acts as a fascinating counter-narrative to literally everything else in our briefing today.
It really connects back to you, the listener, navigating your daily life.
Mm-hmm.
We are all living through an era of absolute information overload. The global news cycle is relentlessly heavy, demanding our anxiety 24/7. And yet, faced with all of that, millions of human beings are actively, consciously choosing to use their digital platforms to viralize simple joy and gratitude.
It leaves us with a really provocative final thought to mull over, honestly. We've spent this entire deep dive analyzing the pursuit of optimization. We marvel at AI running at 981 tokens a second. We analyze autonomous agents making frictionless business decisions in milliseconds, and we obsess over supply chain efficiency.
We do.
But when you look at a Cannes jury rewarding a deeply messy human drama and a viral internet trend built entirely on everyday gratitude, it makes you wonder. As we successfully manage to automate the entire mechanical world, will our ultimate irreplaceable value simply be our capacity to feel, to belong, and to be profoundly grateful for the slow, inefficient beauty of being human?
That is a brilliant question to end on. Because, as we established right at the start, the purely digital, frictionless cloud is a myth. We are firmly tethered to this messy physical world, and maybe that human messiness isn't a bug in the system.
Maybe it's the feature.
Maybe it's actually the best part. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Stay curious, take a moment to find your own everything hallelujah today, and remember, no matter how fast the world is spinning, there is always something worth smiling about. Catch you next time.